there is a kind of pride that the Greeks feared more than almost any sin, the pride that makes a mortal believe they have risen to the level of the gods. They had a word for it, hubris. And no story shows the catastrophe of that pride more clearly or more heartbreakingly than the story of Niobe. Niobe was a queen, and by every earthly measure she had reason to be proud. She was rich, she was royal, she was married to a famous king, and above all, she was the mother of 14 beautiful children, 7 strong sons and 7 lovely daughters. She looked at everything she had, and she made a single boast in public that no one in her position should ever have made. She compared herself to a goddess. And by the end of that same day, every one of her 14 children would be dead, and Niobe herself would be changed into something that was not quite alive and not quite stone. How does a proud mother lose everything she has in the space of a single afternoon? That is the story you'll hear tonight. The queen who thought herself the equal of a goddess, the swift and terrible answer of the gods, and the weeping stone she became, which the old writers swear can still be seen to this day. If you enjoy these stories, take a moment to subscribe. It truly helps this channel, and tell me in the comments which myth you'd like next. Now settle in, and let's meet the proudest mother in Greece. Niobe was the queen of Thebes, one of the greatest cities in all of Greece, and she had been born to greatness on every side. Her father was Tantalus, yes, that Tantalus, the one who had dined with the gods, and through him she could even claim Zeus as an ancestor. She had grown up in wealth and privilege, and she had married Amphion, the king of Thebes, a man so gifted in music that the legend said he had raised the very walls of the city by the power of his playing. Together, they ruled a proud and prosperous kingdom. But the crown of Niobe's life, the thing she treasured above her royal birth and her wealthy marriage and her great city, was her children. She had 14 of them, 7 sons, tall and strong and skilled in every manly art, and 7 daughters, graceful and beautiful, and ready to marry into the finest families in the land. In the ancient world, where so many children died young, to have 14 healthy children was itself a kind of miracle, a sign of overwhelming good fortune. And Niobe knew it. She looked at her sons and daughters, the pride of Thebes, and she felt that surely no woman alive, and perhaps no goddess either, had ever been so blessed. It was a beautiful thing to feel. It was also, in the world of the Greek gods, an extraordinarily dangerous thing to say out loud. The day it all unraveled was a festival day. The women of Thebes had gathered to honor the goddess Leto, a quiet, dignified goddess who was the mother of 2 of the most powerful gods of all, Apollo, god of the sun and the bow, and Artemis, goddess of the hunt. The Theban women came to Leto's altar with incense and prayers and laurel in their hair, offering their worship to the mother of the twin gods. And Niobe could not bear it. She came sweeping through the crowd in her royal robes and demanded to know why the women were wasting their devotion on Leto, a goddess they had never even seen, when there was a far worthier woman standing right in front of them. "Look at me," she told them. "I am descended from the gods myself. I am queen of this great city. And as for children, Leto had only 2, a single son and a single daughter, while I have 14, 7 sons and 7 daughters, the finest children in all of Greece. How can you honor a goddess with 2 children over a queen with 14? Put out your altar fires," she commanded them, "and go home. I am more deserving of your worship than Leto will ever be." It was a stunning thing to say, a mortal woman ordering the worship of a goddess to stop and claiming it for herself instead. The Theban women, frightened, fell silent and obeyed. But Leto had heard every word. High above, on the heights of a cloud-wreathed mountain, the goddess Leto burned with anger, not the loud rage of a tyrant, but the cold, focused fury of a mother whose children have been insulted. Niobe had not merely been proud. She had mocked Leto in front of her own worshippers and tried to strip her of her honor. And Leto had 2 children who were perfectly equipped to answer such an insult. She called them to her, Apollo and Artemis, the divine archers, the twin gods whose arrows never missed their mark, and she told them exactly what the Queen of Thebes had said. She did not need to ask them twice. The twins took up their silver bows and slipped down from the mountain, wrapped in cloud, moving unseen toward the city of Thebes. Apollo would deal with the 7 sons. Artemis would deal with the 7 daughters. There would be no warning, no argument, no chance to take back the boast or beg for mercy. The Greeks understood their gods this way. An insult to a god's honor was not a thing that could be talked through, and the punishment, when it came suddenly and without negotiation. Down in the city, the children of Niobe were going about their day, knowing nothing of what their mother had said or what was now gliding silently toward them through the air. The 7 sons had ridden out, as young noblemen did, to exercise their horses on the broad plain beyond the walls. The 7 sons of Niobe were on the plain beyond the city, exercising their horses in the bright morning when the first arrow came. The eldest, riding at full gallop, suddenly slumped and fell from his horse without a sound, struck down by an enemy he never saw. Then the next brother fell, and the next. From his hiding place in the clouds, Apollo loosed his shafts one after another and one after another. The young men of Thebes dropped to the ground. Some tried to flee when they understood that death was falling from an empty sky. Others bent over their stricken brothers trying to help and were struck down in their turn. There was nothing any of them could do. You cannot fight an archer. You cannot see, cannot dodge an arrow fired by a god. One by one, all 7 of Niobe's sons, the strong, proud young men who had been the glory of the city, fell still upon the plain where they had been riding only minutes before. The news raced back through the streets to the palace, and it broke the heart of King Amphion, Niobe's husband. The old stories say that grief alone took him that very day, unable to bear that all his sons were gone in a single morning. But Niobe was not finished losing. She still had her 7 daughters. And she still, even now, had not learned. When word reached Niobe that her sons were dead, the proud queen was struck with grief, but even now, in the depth of her loss, the old pride had not entirely left her. Standing among the bodies of her 7 sons, she is said to have cried out to the heavens that even so, even after all this, she still had more children than Leto, that with 7 daughters remaining, she was still the richer mother. It was the last boast she would ever make. The words were barely out of her mouth when the second bow began to sing. Now it was Artemis, hidden in the same cloud, who drew and loosed, and now it was the daughters of Niobe who began to fall. The young women had gathered around their fallen brothers, weeping, dressed in mourning, and one by one, as their mother watched, they sank to the ground beside the bodies, each struck by a silent, unerring arrow. Niobe rushed from one to the next, trying to shield them with her own body, throwing her arms over her remaining children and begging the gods to stop. "Spare just one," she cried at last. "Spare the youngest, leave me only this one." But the gods do not bargain. The final arrow found the last and youngest of her daughters, even as Niobe tried to hide the girl in the folds of her robe. And then it was silent. In a single day, all 14 of Niobe's children were gone, and the proudest mother in Greece stood utterly alone among them. What happened to Niobe after that is one of the strangest and most haunting images in all of Greek myth. She did not die. She did not rage or fight or curse the gods. She simply sat down among the bodies of her 14 children, in the ruins of everything she had been so proud of, and she wept. And she went on weeping. The grief that took hold of her was so total, so far beyond anything a human being could bear or recover from, that it seemed to drain the very life out of her while she still lived. The old poets describe it in eerie detail. As she sat there, frozen by sorrow, she began to turn to stone. First her tongue grew silent and cold, then the breath stilled in her chest, her neck, her arms, her feet hardened and went gray. The color drained from her until she was nothing but a statue of a grieving woman carved from living rock. And yet, even the stone could not hold all her grief. The gods, or perhaps the sheer force of her sorrow, carried the stone figure of Niobe far away, back to Mount Sipylus, the mountain of her childhood in the east. And there she was set upon the heights, a weathered rock in the shape of a weeping woman. But here is the detail that the ancient writers swear to, the thing that makes the story unforgettable. Even as solid stone, Niobe never stopped weeping. On the slopes of Mount Sipylus, they say, the stone that is Niobe weeps still. Water seeps endlessly from the rock and runs down its weathered face like tears, year after year, century after century, never drying up, never stopping. The grief that turned her to stone did not end when she became stone. It simply continued, silent and eternal, a mother crying forever for the children she lost in a single afternoon. And the remarkable thing is that this was not only a story to the ancient Greeks. There really is, on the side of Mount Sipylus, in what is now western Turkey, a natural rock formation that from a distance looks unmistakably like the figure of a seated, mourning woman with water trickling down its face from a spring above. Travelers in the ancient world went to see it and pointed to it and said, "There she is. There is Niobe." The myth and the mountain had grown together. For the Greeks, that weeping rock was not just a curious accident of nature. It was a warning, set in stone where everyone could see it, a permanent reminder of what comes of a mortal who dares to set themselves above the gods, and of the bottomless grief that pride can purchase in a single careless boast. The 7 sons, the 7 daughters, all of it gone, because a happy mother could not stop herself from saying one proud thing too many. It is easy at first to hear the story of Niobe as a simple lesson about arrogance, and the Greeks certainly told it that way. Do not boast against the gods. Do not let good fortune make you reckless with your words. But there is something deeper and sadder in it than a warning. Niobe's great crime was not cruelty or violence. It was love, taken one step too far. She adored her children. Her boast came from genuine joy in them, from a mother's overwhelming pride in the people she had brought into the world. And it was exactly that love that the gods used to destroy her, taking from her the very thing she had been unable to stop celebrating. There is something almost unbearable in the image they left us with, not a punished villain, but a mother turned to weeping stone, her sorrow made so permanent that even rock cannot contain it. Perhaps that is why the story has lasted, and why it still has the power to move us long after we have stopped fearing Apollo's arrows. It is not really about pride at all, in the end. It is about grief, the kind that does not heal, the kind that turns a living person to stone and goes on flowing, quietly, for the rest of time. If this is the kind of story you want more of, take a moment to subscribe and tell me in the comments which myth I should tell next. Sleep well.